Thank you, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ann Childers.
Hi there, good morning. It's so great to see you all. Can you hear me okay? You can? Everybody can hear me clear to the back? Good. All right, great. So it's really interesting to me how Americans think about food. You can see Americans don't feed cereal to dogs, and they wouldn't think about giving them a lollipop. But we certainly do that with children. I guess this is what moves the... There we go. Great. So this is the title of my talk. And I'm Ann Childers. You can find me on Twitter, join in the conversation, Ann Childers MD. As I refer to diabetes, I'm talking about type 2. By the way, you'll see a little jiggle in my head. It's a long story. I have dystonia. It started way back when I got sick, which started my journey toward keto and low carb, high fat. I won't go into it today, but I just wanted to let you know. So I'm going to give you 4 things. Diet is important to mental health. The optimal diet is determined in large part by the GI system. Okay, people talk about the teeth a lot. We really need to look at the gut. Humans are carnivores. This is my opinion, but I'm not alone. There are a lot of anthropologists who share this opinion. And a carnivore diet holds promise in mental health and also for non-communicable chronic disease. These are things like diabetes and heart disease, etc. So, traditional diets. That's, I think, where we need to roll back time. We need to roll back to traditional diets. Anybody here familiar with Weston A. Price Foundation? They've tried to do a lot of work with this. So if you want to see more about traditional diets, there's a book by Weston A. Price that you can get. You can actually get it free online. So once upon a time, circumpolar people, that's people around the North Pole, enjoyed perfect teeth. Look at these teeth. They are gorgeous. This older lady has beautifully aligned teeth. She never saw a dentist. She never saw an orthodontist. Her diet was ideal for her mouth, and I think this is an important concept. So good health, no seasonal depression in winter darkness, and they had 24 hours of that. So psychiatrists in the US were mystified by this. But for circumpolar people in the winter, the diet looked like this. So in 2004, it was noticed that the prevalence of disability due to mental and behavioral disorders was on the rise. Disability, not just mental and behavioral disorders, but disability from these disorders. What happened? Well, the change in traditional diets. That's what it came down to. That's what they noticed. They saw problems such as obesity, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes and mental illness, and these all came arm in arm. They all came arm in arm, and they all increased together. So, how many people are familiar with the PURE study? It just came out on August 29th. We've been anticipating it for quite a while. Dr. Salim Yusuf, president of the World Heart Federation. And basically what he found in his 18-country study of more than 135,000 people, he basically found that increasing dietary carbohydrates was a problem. And especially these, I would say, these refined carbohydrates that we're so used to seeing on store shelves. Whereas increasing dietary fat actually was protective. To me, the secret to optimal human diet for mental health lies in the gut. The gut is a second brain. It pours out more dopamine, more serotonin than the brain itself in many cases. Different gut. You can see it on the surface with animals. Different gut, different diet. Notice that this gentleman who's sitting with the gorilla has a flat stomach. And the gorilla has a round stomach. There are different functions for each of these digestive systems, and they are not the same. So we should look like the gentleman on the left and not the gentleman on the right, if we can at all help it. The problem is that after decades of the wrong diet, many people end up with this middle gut, which is often quite hard to get rid of. So let's take a look at relative gut volume. We're going to compare the primates, other primates, to human beings. And one thing should stand out for you. You'll see the stomach takes up relatively the same amount of space, about 25%. But do you see that small intestine? That very long, tall line is human. That's us. And if you look at the colon takes up a much less volume in the gut. And in a way, this reflects the importance of each organ. So what is the colon used for? The colon is used to ferment plants. So you can see that these other animals have a plant-based diet, and they're uniquely suited to digest plants. That's what that colon does. But you can see human beings not so. Humans can digest raw meat. Anybody here eat sushi? Yes? Yeah, humans can digest raw meat. And in fact, that small intestine is great for absorbing meat, but not so good for plants. Plants have to travel on through and get to the colon. The small intestine manages a low residue diet, and it turns out humans can live without a colon. They can live without it. And unfortunately, many humans have had to. Okay, oh, I apologize, I'm sorry. I didn't prepare you for this one. Those who are Disney lovers, I'm really sorry. Bambi and Thumper used to be friends, I know. The reason I point this out, though, kidding aside, is because we tend to want to put herbivores and carnivores and omnivores in some kind of a box. It doesn't really work. What we are is nutritional opportunists. And if a deer is in the middle of winter and they don't have the food that they need, or if they're missing minerals or vitamins, they will crave, and they will basically get it where they can. Squirrels are omnivores. They pretty much eat birds' eggs, birds, all kinds of things, more than just nuts. A lot of people don't know that. Anyway, humans, getting back to humans, humans digest plants poorly. And cellulose is the challenge. Anybody here ever try to eat a pencil? Okay, so a pencil has an awful lot of cellulose in it, and this cellulose actually forms a wall around the cell of the plant. And inside that cell is the nutrition that we need. So we can't, in many cases, just chew it apart. It would take too long, and it would wear our teeth down. So we have other ways of getting around this as human beings. Oh, and by the way, undigested cellulose could be a problem. And in fact, it does cause problems. It can cause a lot of mucus. It does relieve constipation, but it can also cause some trouble in the intestine at the same time. I'm a big fan of magnesium, so you can read about it, but magnesium is very helpful for constipation. And by the way, these fibers, they also cause our cells to react and produce a lot of methane. So cattle are not the only source of methane. Humans are as well. I don't think anyone's quantified it, but okay. So breaking down plant cellulose, human style, we have to ferment it or pickle it, and that actually gives us the best nutritional yield. But you have to be careful because your teeth have enamel, and you can soften it by eating too many acids. You can cook them, you can puree them, you can breed vegetables and fruits for tenderness. You can chew for a very long time, but as I said, that can actually cause problems. And in fact, a lot of raw vegans have a lot of tooth decay and mouth disease, and it's not necessarily because they're eating a lot of sugar. It's because of the acids in the plants that they're eating. Also, these plants that we take for granted come from generations of selection. Do you see that wild mustard in the middle? That is how your cauliflower and your broccoli and your cabbage. That's how it all started about 1,000 years ago. Okay, this is a little girl at the North Pole, around the North Pole, circumpolar girl hunting with harpoons. It tells me it should be halfway through. Nutrition and mental health is in its infancy. There's no doubt about it. We don't know enough about it. It's very important to know that. So often we think that modern science is caught up. We've got a long way to go. But what I can do is give you concepts. That's what my brain is good at, is looking at the large overview, figuring out patterns and concepts. So I can show you some details, but that's not really my wheelhouse. So I'm going to show you some concepts that may help you understand mental health and diet. We're going to start with the roller coaster, and the roller coaster is about what the standard American diet puts us on. And if you look at blood sugar versus time, you can see that the carbohydrate has the steepest peak. And the more refined that carbohydrate is, and the more it is in isolation of fats, the steeper the peak. Okay? I've been wearing a Dexcom G5 continuous glucose monitor. As we speak, this monitor is taking my blood sugar every 5 minutes. I did an experiment with Cheerios, just Cheerios and skim milk. Went up to 175 and came crashing down. The blood sugars that resulted were higher than what I started. Now, this is my metabolism and not yours. I'm a type 2 diabetic. However, I did the same experiment with the same cup of Cheerios, but instead of 50 calories of skim milk, I did 50 calories of cream and got a very, very even blood sugar line. It stayed at about 100 for hours. Okay? Big difference when you add fat to your food. Notice protein also produces glucose, and we believe there is some gluconeogenesis, that is making glucose, just as from protein, a little bit in fat as well. But you can see that fat gives you energy over a much more prolonged period. This is from Diet Doctor, Dr. Andreas Einfeld. I hope you're all familiar with him. He's a great one. If you're not, go check out his site, dietdoctor.com. Anyway, he had this lunch that was at an obesity conference, for Pete's sake. Anyway, you can see that it just gave him the roller coaster, and he actually ended up being down further than where he started. And that can be a reactive hypoglycemia. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. And notice that the steak and hollandaise sauce or béarnaise sauce or whatever that is gave him a much smoother line. That fat is worth its weight in gold. All right, so energy, quick and slow. And you can see the one on the left shows us that roller coaster, and it brings you into the hangry zone. And people that are on the standard American diet, the 55 to 65% carbohydrate diet and 30% less or less of fats, they have to eat all the time. And those of us who have done keto, low carb, high fat, suddenly realize we're not hungry. In fact, I'm quite sedentary. I'm confessing in front of all of you. I'm actually pretty sedentary, and I'm in my 60s. And you can see it really doesn't seem to cause a problem for me, although I really should do something. Okay, I admit it. I should do something, right? It's been years. Anyway. But I just wanted to tell you that, okay? So people who are handicapped, people who are elderly, you don't have to jog or do intervals. You can still benefit from a low-carb, high-fat diet and from keto if you need it, for sure. All right, so Joseph Kraft, this is basically just one of his, we've heard about Joseph Kraft from previous speakers, really wonderful work in my opinion. And you can see this normal glucose but abnormal insulin. I'm going to show you how that played out in a patient of mine. So basically here we have a young lady, she's in her 20s, she's a vegetarian for religious reasons. She had no anemia. Basically everything looked good, so her hemoglobin A1C should be pretty accurate. Here's the thing, if you have rapid cell turnover, the hemoglobin A1C may not be accurate. In fact, it may look lower than it should. Okay, so in fact, it's been found to be very inaccurate. I would say do the OGTT with insulin, do the oral glucose tolerance test with insulin if you really want to know where you're at. So anyway, moving on. So her fasting glucose was 77, and you would expect that that would be just A-OK fine. But you can see as she moved through, her insulin started pouring out. And I've seen insulin levels during these tests go at 250, 260. So unless you get down under the rug, unless you actually get a chance to see it, you don't know where you are metabolically, and most doctors don't test for this. Oh. All right. So this is my patient with Joseph Kraft, and you can see that her insulin her glucose came way up, and her insulin came way up, and then just came crashing down. And it turned out that she had insulin resistance, and she didn't even know it. By the way, hypoglycemia is not an innocent thing. I actually had hypoglycemia from an experiment I did with my Dexcom, drinking a half a cup of skim milk. My sugars soared to 117, then crashed to 68. And I was hangry. I was hungry, I was angry, I was irritated at my bird for chirping, and frankly, that's what birds do. Okay, in this case, couples with hypoglycemia stuck more pins in their voodoo dolls. So Women's Health Initiative found that a high glycemic index can be a risk factor for depression, and that's the first peak that we've had that maybe these high glucose levels are not good for us. Here also, 27,000 parents weighed in on autistic symptoms on the autism spectrum. And what they found in their children is if they controlled the carbohydrates, the kids got better. And part of what showed that they were on too many carbohydrates was the fact that they were getting yeast infections, candida, and they'd have high candida loads in their stool. Okay, ketogenic diet in mental health. We're seeing an emergence of data, but it is sparse. It's very, very sparse. Most of it is in animals. And you can see there are a few humans, and it's promising. It's quite promising for mood stabilization. But you can see the next one said there was no difference. And so we still have very, very sparse and very few and very short studies on ketosis in human beings for mental health. It's unfortunate because it holds great promise. If you think about it, the psychiatrists generally use what are called mood stabilizers, but these are also anti-epileptic drugs. So ketogenic diet is also anti-epileptic. Is there a correlation here of some kind? This needs to be studied. All right, serum cholesterol and mental health. People worry about, oh, my cholesterol is going to go up. My LDLs went up, but they're still large, fluffy particles. It's still the right particle size. But people really worry about this because we've been ingrained with the cholesterol theory. But it was found that children that had less than 145 of cholesterol were nearly threefold more likely to be suspended or expelled. I also look for, in adults, less than 160. Less than 160 concerns me. Now, that may be normal. It may be normal in their family and they don't have any mental health issues. But if that's not normal in the family and I'm seeing the kid is vegan or, there's some kind of unusual thing, I usually try to encourage them to at least eat an egg a day. Try to go to 2. But I think it's really important that we have robust cholesterol. In most cases. I've seen it as low as 99, and this is on statins. I've also seen people off statins with cholesterols as low as 99. I'm not convinced it's a good thing, and some people on statins do complain of depression. So getting off the high carbohydrate mood and anxiety roller coaster, excuse me, sorry. Okay, recommended starter diet, first medical clearance. Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you. First, medical clearance. A lot of people are on blood pressure medicines. There are medicines that for their blood sugar. They have, especially if they have diabetes, they are on insulin. Sorry. If you put someone on a ketogenic diet, you put them on a low-carb, high-fat diet, things improve. Blood sugars get better. Blood pressure gets better. And we don't want them to bottom out their blood pressure. That could cause a stroke in some people. So, and the same with blood sugars. Hypoglycemia is no joke. So, so it's very important that people starting this diet who are not type 1s need special supervision. But even if you're not a type 1, really, you know, you need to get your doctor on board and make sure that you're a candidate, especially if you're on medications. It also eliminates the additives and preservatives. People don't realize food colorings were found to promote ADHD in kids that never had ADHD before. Very important to know that. It's a good source of cholesterol. I think the continuous glucose monitor, like the one I'm wearing today, I'm pointing to my transmitter, is a great idea for everyone. It's true, you can't see insulin. It's not going to give you the whole picture. But it could make a big difference in how you eat. If you're pouring out too much insulin, you might find yourself getting into hypoglycemia. Tim Cook was test driving one earlier this year that's non-invasive, that was hooked to the Apple Watch, as I understand it, and was able to, through the skin, to detect the blood sugars. This could be a game changer, and I look forward to it. Hopefully he'll be introducing the Apple Watch later this year. Fingers crossed that we get a continuous glucose monitor for everyone. Here are the markers. I just put this here if you want to take a picture of it. It gives you an idea of how your blood glucose should be during fasting, before and after a meal. Sorry. Oh, there we go. I am proud to join other speakers here as one of the people who co-authored this paper. This paper is free to you. It's free to your friends. It's free to your doctor. Just go find it and read it. Dr. Feynman has done a wonderful body of research, and much of this is summarized right in this paper. I think it's important for everyone. It's currently, I believe, it's still the most downloaded paper after more than 2 years for the Journal of Nutrition. All right, so I was going to tell you 4 things. Diet is important to mental health. Optimal diet is determined in large part by the GI tract. People talk about the teeth. They say they say we have no claws. No, look at the GI tract. We had tools, we had weapons, we knew what to do, and we knew how to chop up meats so that we could not have to chew them so much or swallow big chunks. So we were very clever about how we did it, and it grew big brains. We did adapt plants for digestion, for our own digestion, and if you look, you'll see more of a carnivore diet at the north, and in the equator, you'll see more plants being utilized. But these plants are carefully prepared. Leaning toward a carnivore diet holds promise in mental health. And this is my office. I'm very proud of it. We just bought it in November. We love it so much. It's like a home. It's a home for our patients and a home for us. And this is where you can find me. Thank you so much. We have 6 minutes for questions. Sorry, I can't see with the lights. Yes.
I've got a question. Actually, it's kind of a 2-part question. So I love eating animals, but I also love animals.
Yes.
So I have a kind of a hard time with guilt about that, speaking of like mental health issues and
Sure.
animal-based diet. And then, so that's part A. And then part B is I have a nephew who's vegan, has been for several years, and he's so angry. He's been angry as long as he's been vegan.
Wow.
So those are just kind of two things, but maybe one, reconciling a love for animals and eating them, and number two, anger of vegans.
Okay. So I'll start by saying that lions and cheetahs are not apologetic. You know, but humans are in a way, and in fact, tribes have been known to honor their kills and to be careful about killing and make sure that they ate from snout to tail, they utilized everything they could, and gave thanks for it. And I think that's the attitude that we have to have. The other thing is we need to raise these animals properly. A humanely raised animal will give you more nutrition by far than an animal that's cruelly raised. I believe that in my heart of hearts. We had 30 million buffalo in the United States roaming on 10 feet of rich topsoil, and they were not tearing holes in the ozone. These animals were doing what they naturally do and contributing to our ecosystem in a healthy way. We can still do this. Look up Joel Salatin, S-A-L-A-T-I-N. I'm from Oregon. A lot of the Oregon farmers are doing this. I imagine that farmers all over the nation are doing this. You can actually see a satellite photograph over the top of his chicken pens as they move across the pasture. And he has gold in front where the pasture is dried, and green in back where the chickens have been fertilizing. It's the most wonderful system. Alan Savory is another model. He used to kill elephants, as I understand it, and he does it no longer. He realizes now that elephants can be part of the solution and that large herds can heal the earth. We just have to give them a chance. We have to get educated about it. That's really the bottom line.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question.
That's a really important message, thank you, and thank you for your talk. I just wanted to mention that I really believe that this link between extremely low cholesterol and mental health needs to be investigated a great deal. My own daughter ended up in hospital with terrible anxiety and depression about 2 years ago, and her triglycerides were, well, her total cholesterol was well below 90.
Oh my.
It was really frightening. And when I went to them and I said, look at the research, there is a categorical link between mental health and extremely low cholesterol, I was laughed out of the hospital.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And we discovered 2 years later that she had a significant malabsorption issue, which has now been rectified, and she is thriving. But it was, this was a leading hospital in the capital city of Canada, and it was laughed out. So please keep doing what you're doing and spread that word. There is a link, and we do need to look at it.
Thank you. Thank you.